Have you ever wondered why, after a first infection, like a virus like COVID, or a bacteria like actinomyces, or maybe mold like Stachybotrys, why after that first infection, you may have had a secondary infection or a tertiary infection, or just constantly more infections piling up on you? Well, this is because after that first infection, you got microsepsis and endotoxin tolerance, which creates a hospitable environment for both pathogens to be acquired and for you to have a lot of oxidative stress. Let's discuss today what is endotoxin tolerance and maybe some things that you can do about it. So, your innate immune system has the ability to sense foreign invaders. It also has the ability to sense on its own self damage to its own self. The way it does this is what is called toll-like receptors. So toll-like receptors are able to signal from outside of the cell to inside of the cell to create an inflammatory response to fight a pathogen. This is what your innate immune system relies on to kill things. When toll-like receptors are activated on the innate immune system, it creates TNF alpha, interleukin 1 beta, interleukin 6, which are all very pro-inflammatory cytokines, which is great to have for an initial immune response because you want to stop the pathogen. Now, what happens with an infection that is not able to be taken care of right away, or you have some other oxidative issues or inflammatory issues or dysbiosis, you get what's called endotoxin tolerance. It's where the things that stimulate the toll-like receptors no longer signal that inflammatory response, and instead it causes a dampened response with anti-inflammatory molecules instead. So instead of TNF alpha and interleukin 1 beta and interleukin 6, you get interleukin 10 and TGF beta. So if you've ever had SIRS or a high level of TGF beta with TGF beta syndrome, you essentially have what this is happening is called endotoxin tolerance and immunosuppression, because these are anti-inflammatory cytokines. They suppress the innate immune response. Now, when your innate immune response doesn't work anymore, guess what has to kick in? Your adaptive immune response. You still need an immune response. It's just your initial line of defense is no longer working because it's suppressed with endotoxin tolerance. Now, your adaptive immune system relies on T cells. Now, T cells will produce Th17 cytokines, which are highly inflammatory, which are found in a lot of autoimmune diseases. And they will also differentiate into T regulatory cells, which keep that inflammation at bay. So it's kind of like a balancing act between these two. Now, having these both active gives you both the ability to have autoimmunity, autoantibodies, autoinflammatory antigens, so essentially antigenic problems, and a favorable environment for cancer, because there's a lot of T regulatory cells, which makes it easier for capillary beds to grow and cancer colonies to form. And to think this is only because interferon gamma is no longer working, right? Because you have chronic activation of toll-like receptors, which downregulates the NF-kappa beta complex and is producing a lot of anti-inflammatory cytokines. So you're stuck being anti-inflamed, essentially immunosuppressed, and with a lot of oxidative stress, essentially the ability to not have a good redox response. So when a stressful thing happens to your body, whether it's like sunlight or doing something vasoadaptive or mentally stressful, whatever it is, any kind of stress is too much because you already have a high oxidative stress load, because of being stuck in this apoptotic state of the innate immune system. Oh wow, I just listened back to that clip and there's a bunch of scientific jargon. So let's just say this in a more layman English way of saying it. Essentially, when a pathogen is chronically activating the innate immune system, it causes the innate immune system to no longer produce a fighting response, but rather a let's kick back and not cause ourselves more collateral damage response. And you get stuck there. That causes the immune system to not react, essentially. Okay, that's more English terms. Now, because your immune system is no longer responding to pathogens, that means other pathogens can come and be acquired easily. You know, your immune system is no longer fighting. It's chilling. It's laying on the back burner. It doesn't want to cause you any more collateral damage. So it's not going to fight. It's not going to produce these inflammatory cytokines anymore. So it's a lot easier to catch co-infections and parasites and get more dysbiosis and other pathogens. Like, how many people do you know that had COVID and then every single month they're getting like another cold, like influenza or some kind of respiratory virus, and they're testing negative for COVID because they're not getting COVID, right? They're getting they're getting RSV. They're getting very simple things because they're catching secondary infections. And if you catch enough of those, you can get a super infection. And that's very dangerous. You also get this in the SIRS community. Like, you'll see people get immunosuppressed from mold or actinomyces or endotoxin, and then they get a co-infection or a secondary infection like Lyme disease or Borrelia, Babesia, Bartonella, all those kind of things. Or they show up with tons of parasites in their GI or wherever it is, like Toxoplasma gondii in their brain. Why do they have all those things in SIRS? Why there's so many co-infections? It's because they're immunosuppressed from endotoxin tolerance. This brings up a lot of questions, and people want answers. And I've been studying this for a while, especially in the SIRS community, because I've been diagnosed with it myself. Same thing with co-infections. Same thing with having post-long EBV. I've had to find out these answers for myself. So I created a guide called Junction Dysfunction. If you go to junctiondysfunction.com, you can get access to it right away. Now, what is junction dysfunction? Junction dysfunction is the conglomeration of transient capillary leak syndrome, microsepsis, and then endotoxin tolerance. And we've already talked about this one today. If you want to learn about the other two as well, it's in the guide. I also have other videos that are on it as well. That's called Everything You Need to Know About Junction Dysfunction, Part 1 and 2. So thank you guys so much for listening and watching this video. If you want more information about this kind of stuff and what to do, junctiondysfunction.com. If you want free tools and access to blog posts and biohacking modalities, go to mybiohack.com. You can get all those kind of resources. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe. And if you like this video, like it and share it to someone who needs it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and stay beautiful.